When it comes to gluten and hormones, this is up here. You can see gluten and hormone imbalance. This is, I just did this search this morning just to kind of give you an idea of how much research has actually been done on gluten and hormones. Because it's not just me standing up here saying this. I'm just the messenger, so don't shoot me. But this is the National Library of Medicine database. Okay, PubMed is the National Library of Medicine database. And if you type in gluten and hormone balance as of today's date, there are 396 peer-reviewed studies performed on how gluten disrupts hormones. So when your doctor tells you that gluten has nothing to do with hormones, shame on him. Because anybody can get access to this. But doctors especially should know how to do this. This is just part and parcel to being up to speed on current literature, current research. So science, and this is just one topic. We could also type in gluten and thyroid hormone imbalance and we would pull up even more. We could pull up gluten specifically in cortisol, gluten specifically in adrenal gland dysfunction, and we pull up even more research. So, here's the infamous gluten-free warrior slaying the gluten hydra. And so, when it comes to hormones, this is the way this works. A lot of times when patients, or when people, before they're patients, right? Before they become patients, they develop symptoms. And so some of the more common symptoms that we see develop when hormones become disrupted, one of the most common is fatigue, right? Thyroid hormone is low, we get tired. Cortisol levels are low, we get tired. Insulin levels don't work properly, we get tired. And when some hormones, especially in women, we'll see hot flashes when hormone imbalance occurs. And it's just generally, it's just a symptom at first before it becomes a disease. Oftentimes we see hair loss, and this happens in both men and women it could be through testosterone malconversion. In women it could be due to thyroid loss, in men it could be due to thyroid hormone loss. It could be due to an autoimmune reaction on the hair follicle. There's a lot of ways this can happen, and gluten can cause them all. We can get sleep disturbance, trouble going to sleep. And this can manifest in a number of different ways too. It can manifest as the mind won't shut down at night. Okay, this is one of the more common ones. Women especially, they lay down in bed and their mind's just going 90 to nothing. They were tired at 5. They were wiped out at 5, and they were complaining to their husband all day about how they're wiped out at 5 o'clock and they can't function. And then 9 o'clock comes and it's bedtime and the husband's falling asleep and the wife goes, I can't go to sleep, right? Keep says, I've heard this story 1,000 times. But sleep disturbance, it's an imbalance in hormones, right? A lot of times it's a cortisol dysregulation. People are making cortisol when they should not be making cortisol, and cortisol wakes you up. So at 9 o'clock when you start overproducing cortisol, you can't go to sleep and your mind just goes over and over and over. But you can also have sleep disturbance for other reasons. You can have a serotonin imbalance, which is another type of hormone. You can also have a sleep disturbance as a result of the nerve damage that gluten can do. Some people develop restless leg syndrome, where their legs are real jittery, real jumpy, and they just can't fall asleep because their legs don't want to quit moving. So there's a lot of ways that sleep can be affected. And then there's headache. Very, very common symptom of gluten exposure. And we can have headache as a result of hormone disruption from gluten. We can have headache as a result of muscular spasm induced as a result of hormone disruption, as a result of gluten, right? We can talk about a million different ways that a headache can develop. But headaches are a very, very common side effect. Low libido. And this could happen in a number of different ways. It could just be that the fatigue is so great that there's just no libido there. But it can also be a hormone-induced low libido, not making the hormones that drive libido, that drive the desire. And stiffness. And stiffness, muscle and joint stiffness, muscle and joint pain, extremely, extremely common. Most people just blow this one off as, I'm 40 years old. I'm going to have some stiffness. I'm 40. I'm not stiff when I wake up. I feel pretty good. It's not a part of aging. It's a part of damage over time. And so gluten is one of those things that damage people over time. So how it works. So if we go back again, I'm going to go back one more time here. When I say how it works, what I'm referring to, this is a hydra. It's got 7 heads. Okay, so I'm going to give you a Greek mythology story too. Maybe you guys have heard me talk about this before, but I love mythology, so that's why I picked the hydra. When you chop off a head of a hydra, what happens? Grows 2 more. That's right. When I drug these symptoms as a physician, when I treat fatigue, okay, with an energy pill, when I treat libido with Viagra, okay, when I treat hair loss with Rogaine creams, okay, when I treat fatigue with antidepressants or whatever the case might be, I'm not treating the origin of the problem. I'm only treating the symptom. And when you slay a head off, when you knock a head off of a hydra, it grows 2 more. So the medicine masks the condition while the problem still festers. And as the problem festers, 2 more heads sprout, and you have 2 more symptoms. Right? That's generally the way it works. So when I say how it works, that's what I'm talking about. Now, this is the trap that a lot of people get involved in. I call it the medical trap. Once you develop symptoms, you go to your doctor. When the symptoms become bad enough that they're interfering with your quality of life, enough that you feel like you need professional help. Typically, a trip to the doctor is always, I shouldn't say always, because some doctors don't always do this, but most doctors do. They're going to prescribe you something. You're going in there, they're assuming that you're expecting a drug to fix your problem, and so they're writing you a prescription. Typically, the prescriptions don't work. They may give you some temporary relief. They may do a little bit of benefit, but generally, they don't work. They don't work long term. And so then you go back to your doctor. And then your doctor says, okay, well, let's run some tests. And they run a bunch of different tests, and all your tests come back normal. And they kind of scratch their head and they look at you, and then they tell you, you're crazy. It's just stress. You need to go see the psychiatrist. Or here's an antidepressant. You're just depressed. You're just under too much stress. You're just depressed. Or you're just crazy. Right? How many of you have heard that? Raise your hand real high so everybody can see. That's more than half the room. So I'm not off on this one, right? This is a common thing that happens. So you get some antidepressant drugs, and thousands of dollars later, after tests and drugs, you're still overweight, medicated, and without real answers. This is generally what I see in my office. When people come to see me, it's an average of 8 doctors. It's usually an average of 5 or more medications.